What should we expect for Will Smith's first season in San Jose?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, or at least 3 days a week right now as we are in off-season mode. So if you want to follow along, make sure that you do that wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be diving into Will Smith and what we can kind of expect to see out of Will Smith in his first season. We're going to look at his role for the Sharks and why I think he's going to be set up for success. Look at how other top 10 picks who played one season in the NCAA after their draft year and what they did in their first full season in the NHL, and then try to look at some expectations, try to put some numbers and projections for Smith going forward. So let's start, I think, with Will Smith and kind of what to expect for him in kind of a role. So if you're new and forgot about Will Smith, or it's also the middle of August, and just want a refresher on what Will Smith did at Boston College, he had one of the best seasons you'll ever see for a freshman. 41 games, 25 goals, 46 assists, 130 shots on goal for Will Smith. Was Hobie Baker, kind of announced, wasn't one of the top three finalists, but was kind of in the running to be a Hobie Baker. And there's a very different, easy path for Will Smith to have been at least a Hobie Baker finalist, especially if maybe Cutter Gauthier isn't playing, whatever. But was easily one of the big stories coming out of the NCAA this season. Of course, they got to the finals where they lost to University of Denver. Not for that. Will Smith was an absolute maniac in that game. Massive postseason run. Won gold at World Juniors this year. Is eligible to go back, but I don't expect Will Smith to go back to World Juniors because he's going to be playing NHL games this year. So Will Smith, one of the kind of best 12 months I think you can, if the only other thing would have been capping off with a NCAA championship, but one of the best kind of 12 months that you're going to see from a prospect there. And of course, made his decision to sign this offseason with the San Jose Sharks. Just as a reminder. So since he signed his contract, he's no longer an amateur, cannot go back to Boston College. He can play in the AHL or the NHL, but I fully expect him to be an NHL player this year, just because history kind of tells us that is what's going to happen. So let's look at kind of what Will Smith, I think, what his projected role, and that's a huge part of this for the Sharks and for kind of looking at these projections, is Will Smith is going to be a top 6 player, I project, for San Jose, right? You can kind of looking at where the Sharks are at with their roster construction. Mike Grier added a lot of bottom 6 pieces this offseason, and guys like Carl Grundstrom, Ty Dellandrea, Barclay Goodrow, added a lot of bottom 6 pieces there, and did have some top 6 pieces, and of course, Macklin Celebrini, the first overall pick. They went out and they signed Alex Wenberg, who's kind of his role is going to be, I think, his role is going to be kind of based on Logan Couture and what we expect out of Logan Couture coming forward. But then adding Tyler Toffoli, right, the walking 25 goal scorer, the veteran that the Sharks added there, but Will Smith, I think, he's going to be playing top 6 minutes, and whether that's with maybe Zetterlund and Granlund, and then Will Smith playing on the wing, or if you wanted to, especially because, like you could potentially do that. Or if maybe you put him with Eklund and Couture, or like there's a lot of opportunities. I don't expect to see Celebrini and Smith together very much, especially at 5-on-5 play, because I think you're kind of doing a disservice to the young guys to put them out there and try to figure things out together. I think putting them with veterans or guys who've at least, played a season, and a guy like William Eklund, or played a couple seasons, or like legitimate veterans, is going to put them in their best position to succeed. But assuming Couture is not back, which we're going to kind of assume until Loan Couture is back, I think Will Smith has got a clear-cut top 6 role, because you have Toffoli, top 6 guy, Granlund, top 6 guy, Eklund, top 6 guy, Michael Celebrini, top 6 guy, and then Fabian Zetterlund, top 6 guy. That leaves basically Wenberg versus Will Smith. And I think with Wenberg and his center position flexibility and playing third line center makes a lot of sense. So Will Smith's going to be playing top 6 minutes. He's also going to be playing a ton on the power play, as the Sharks are going to want to put him in a position to succeed. And whether that's power play 1 minute, power play 2 minutes, he's going to get power play opportunities because of his creativity and his ability to shoot the puck, and his ability to pass. And the Sharks power play, which sneaky good at the end of the season last year, will benefit even more so from having Celebrini, Will Smith, Eklund. Like, you have a lot more options and variety to kind of create 2 power play units here. And I think Will Smith's going to get a lot of run and going to be playing important minutes, and that's what the Sharks need him to do, right? As they are working on this rebuild, and you've drafted all these shiny pieces. I need to get them acclimated, and the best way to get better in the NHL is to play in the NHL. And I think for Will Smith, he's going to get a fair amount of rope. And I know Ryan Warsofsky is a guy who's good at working with developing young players and putting them in a position to succeed. You've seen that in his AHL days, his ECHL days, and I think those habits are going to carry forward. That's a big reason why he was hired to take the job, right? So I think you're going to have hopefully you're going to have trust from the coaching staff. You're going to have a playing top 6 minutes. Yes, bad team, but still, like, there's NHL talent among the top 6 forwards for the Sharks. And the player himself is skilled. So Will Smith is a skilled player who needs to be playing top 6 minutes. So I project Will Smith to have a massive role in the 2024-2025 Sharks. And I think he's going to take advantage of said role and be able to produce. So the big question is what can we kind of project, and what type of data points do we have to maybe project what to expect from Will Smith? So what I did, because I'm a nerd who has no life, is I went back the past kind of 10 drafts, and I looked at players who specifically played 1 college season after their draft. So some of these guys played 2 college seasons total, but guys who were drafted in the top 10 draft picks, forwards who played 1 college season and 1 college season after their draft, and then went straight to the pros. So I want to see what their last college season was like, and what their first full professional season was like in the NHL. So we're going to look at some of these different guys, kind of seeing how they've turned out, and then look at what all their numbers average out to be and stuff. So we'll start talking about some of these guys here in just 1 second. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't a search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your hiring and matching platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with your candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need Indeed. All right. So looking back over the past couple seasons, draft guys who, again, criteria, top 10 picks, right? You want guys who are kind of in the same bucket as Will Smith, right? Top 10 picks had to be forwards. So guys like Owen Power, or, you know, some of the defensemen who were picked went to school again, or went back to school, right? And then straight to the NHL. So got several guys here kind of going back. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players who kind of meet that criteria. And some of them are going to be players who, you know, they maybe got a little bit of a taste of the NHL at the end of their season where they signed their ELC, unlike Will Smith, right, who signed his ELC, but this was after the season ended. Some of these guys did get a little bit of a taste of NHL hockey before their kind of rookie season, but I'm mainly focusing on that rookie season and how they performed that year. So let's start with Clayton Keller, 2016 7th overall pick, played for Boston University, and then of course with Arizona Coyotes, now Utah Hockey Club. In the NCAA, he had played 31 games to 21 goals, 24 assists. So kind of not as many games as Will Smith, and you know, but pretty similar scoring rates right there. In the NHL, his first season, he had 82 games, 23 goals with 42 assists. That's a really healthy rookie season for Clayton Keller, that first full season in the NHL. Similar scoring rates in college, and I think similar scoring for Will Smith. So Clayton Keller's turned out to be a really great hockey player for the Coyotes / Arizona or / Utah. So that's a name to kind of keep in mind there. Next, Tyson Jost, 2016 10th overall pick, so a little bit later in the draft, but went to North Dakota, first season with Colorado. 33 games, 16 goals, 19 assists in the NCAA with North Dakota. In his first full season in the NHL, 65 games, 12 goals, 10 assists. So a little bit less scoring rates, especially in college. And you saw that with his jump to the NHL. He's been a guy who's kind of bounced around a little bit in the NHLs here. So you're hoping more of a Clayton Keller, not so much a Tyson. So that was both those guys' 2016 draft. So we jump next to Casey Middlestat. So he played 2017, 8th overall, was a Minnesota pick, played at Minnesota in college, was a pick by Buffalo. 34 games in the NCAA, 11 goals, 19 assists. So again, scoring rates, they're just not kind of the same. NHL, first season, he played 77 games, 12 goals, 13 assists. So again, you're kind of a bit of a trend. You didn't score as much in college. You didn't score as much in the NHL. And again, guy who I know he just got traded this last season. So just two guys there you maybe want to keep an eye on. But again, I think you've seen Will Smith, and especially in college, has proven to be a much better scorer. Yes, that Boston College team was insane, but Will Smith was a big reason why that Boston College team was insane. So moving on to Trevor Zegras. So he's the one guy who's a little bit different because he played a lot of games in the AHL. He kind of split that season. So we'll talk about him a little bit more. But Boston University, the 2019 9th overall pick, and then of course playing for Anaheim. 33 games, 11 goals, and 25 assists in the year that after he was drafted. In the NHL's first season, he played 24 games, had 3 goals and 10 assists in the NHL. Did perform pretty well in the AHL. I'm pulling up his stats right now, but he a player I think they were being extremely patient with. So his first season with the goals, in 17 games, he had 10 goals, 11 assists, and for 21 points with the San Diego goals. So was pouring it on in the AHL. And I know he has become a bit of a interesting kind of point for the Ducks and what do you do with Trevor Zegras, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, when he's been healthy, he definitely has produced. Maybe has some other issues with the kind of the way his game is played. And also, who knows with the Ducks, what they're doing over there. But so later on, we'll kind of look at, especially since his sample size of NHL games is much smaller, we'll kind of look at numbers with and without Trevor Zegras. But I still wanted to throw him in there because, he played a fair amount of games as well. So next, 2021 second overall pick, Matty Beniers. Played for Michigan, and then was also drafted by the Seattle Kraken. So his, I think, are really like numbers to compare because of the scoring rates in college. And I think, while I don't think he's going to be I don't think Will Smith's going to be playing center. I still think that you can look at the roles that they played. 37 games with Michigan, scored 20 goals, 23 assists. NHL games, he played 80. Had 24 goals with 33 assists. Of course, won the Calder for his season with the Kraken. So different players. I know Will Smith and Matty Beniers, but at least the scoring rates are very comparable. So I think the Matty Beniers season is something to kind of definitely keep an eye on for the Sharks. And I know that Kraken team was good that year, right? They made the second round of the playoffs. Their second season really kind of surprised players that year. So I don't expect the Sharks to be that good, but still, I still think the Sharks can potentially score more than they did last year. Next, we also have Kent Johnson, 2021 fifth overall pick with Michigan, and then play with Columbus. 32 games in the NCAA, 8 goals, 29 assists. Which the goals really surprised me. I thought Ken Johnson would have scored more goals in college, but in the NHL, 79 games, had 16 goals and 24 assists. He's been a really weird player in the NHL because dealt with a lot of injuries, and then also the coaching didn't really earn the trust of the coaching staff. And that was always kind of his red flag coming out of college or going into the draft was, are you going to be able to get a guy that you can play in all situations? And there's still those questions about Will Smith, but I think Kent Johnson is a supremely talented player, and hopefully with a new regime can maybe refine that game, his game, and kind of be an exciting young player again. So, but scoring rate, a little bit similar. I think Will Smith has shown more scoring, but Kent Johnson has shown it in the NHL a little bit. So, and then finally, Logan Cooley, who again, I think the scoring rates here are very intriguing. NCAA games with Minnesota, 2022 third overall pick, and then played with Arizona. So he played 39 games in college, 22 goals, 38 assists. NHL games, 82 last season, 22 goals, 24 assists. So, and Cooley was one of those guys where it was, is he going to play? Is he not going to play in NHL, et cetera, et cetera. But those are guys who kind of fit that same criteria. And you have a wide variety of guys some guys who didn't really pan out and maybe, not as exciting, but you have a lot of really exciting players or guys who, are looked to be the next NHL stars. And I think the Cooley, the Matty Beniers ones, the scoring, if you're big into kind of expected, NHL or kind of expected scoring rates in college and how they translate into the pros, those are two that you really want to kind of pay attention to with their games. So I'm excited to look at next on how did these seasons kind of perform and what we should expect for Will Smith in his first season in Teal. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because at eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, so we just went through a bunch of numbers there and kind of looking at how some of these guys performed. And yes, there's some careers that are, a little bit disappointing, but there's also a lot of great careers in there too, right? And if you're being optimistic and hoping, look at Clayton Keller, you look at Matty Beniers, and you look at Logan Cooley. And I know Logan Cooley's had one season, and Matty Beniers had a disappointing year on a bad Kraken team last year. But you expect those guys to be good players going forward, right? And I know maybe Kent Johnson and Trevor Zegras are kind of in the who knows bucket, right? On kind of how they expect. And Zegras has shown a lot of flash and shown, but he's also had his struggles as well. So what does this kind of, looking at all these numbers, right? What does this kind of project for Will Smith? And, what numbers I think make sense for him. So looking at Will Smith, and we're going to look at with Trevor Zegras again, with such a small sample size, I wanted to make sure kind of look at with it and look at without. So the average, one of these guys, they played 70 games in the NHL. They had 16 goals and 22 assists. Their Corsi for percentage, I put $ on accident on the graphic here if you're watching on YouTube, 48.64%, 50.8 goals for percentage. And so they're usually scoring more goals than they're giving up. Maybe a little bit below on the shot attempts. Expected goals for 47.74%. And then scoring chances for 48.43. So as expected with these guys, you're seeing maybe a little bit lower on the defensive side, right? Maybe they're not kind of controlling the pace as much, which is to be expected, right? These are rookies playing in their first full seasons in the NHL. They're going to have those moments where you just kind of get caved in. And for the Sharks team that got caved in a lot, you're going to have these things happen. So I would expect for Will Smith, you're probably going to have Corsi's in the 40s. And if you look at the Sharks last year, right, basically everybody Corsi's in the 40s. So their shot attempts, they're getting outshot basically every night. Expected goals for it, the same thing, right? If you're getting outshot, you're probably giving up more expected goals and you're giving up more scoring chances. So all those make sense. But you did notice, though, the actual goals for was positive. So maybe these young players, they're kind of, maybe they're kind of getting those, not getting as many opportunities, but when they do get an opportunity, they're making the most of it. And I think that's going to be a big thing for Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini, is what happens when you kind of make the most of it. So let's look at without Trevor Zegras. So numbers jump up to 78 NHL games played, which I think is realistic. 18 goals, 24 assists, 47.69 Corsi for, goals for 48.92, expected goals for 47.31, and then scoring chances for 47.75. So again, all these numbers kind of below that 50% mark, which again makes a lot of sense. But I think though, realistically, for Will Smith, playing 78, 80 games, probably pretty close to the 20 goal mark, and then 25 to 30 assists, especially if he's playing big minutes on the power play. I think those are realistic numbers. So put him in that 45-point range right there. And I think that's a really, really solid projection, to be honest. I think right around 20 goals, 25 assists, playing about, 78 to 80 games. Maybe he gets dinged up a little bit here, or maybe, Ryan Warsofsky has to sit him for a game or something like that. I mean, we saw Eklund, right, last year. We only had one player, Fabian Zetterlund, and those abs play all 82 games, right? Eklund was second on the team with 80 because he missed a game. He was a little dinged up for a game, and he was sick for another game. So it's hard to project a rookie to play every game. And I think same thing with Celebrini to keep in mind. But I'm very excited to see Will Smith playing a full season in the NHL. And I expect him to play a full season in the NHL. And yes, he could maybe play AHL games. I think if he goes and plays in the AHL, you're going to have kind of like what we saw with Trevor Zegras, who just put up a bajillion points down there, and kind of even kind of going back to the should Will Smith sign or not. He might just be too good. And yes, playing in the AHL is much tougher than playing in the NCAA. But he's just good. Like Will Smith, there's a reason why he's a top 4 pick. The reason why he is going to be one of the faces of the Sharks. I think he's just going to be really good. And I think playing a full season in NHL is what's best for him. I made that argument for why the Sharks should sign him at the end of the season. Continue to make that argument. And I think with Ryan Warsofsky, he knows this year is all about getting Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini accustomed to the NHL, getting them comfortable. That way we can continue to build this thing when you start to add other young talent and guys like Quentin Musty, Sam Dickinson, Kasper Holttunen, et cetera, et cetera. Like we start to add these other young players, you're not having to try to babysit everybody. You can kind of feel like Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini can kind of go out there and do their thing, just how we expect with William Eklund, right? Eklund last year, rookie, and you kind of feel like, okay, Eklund's established himself. This year, we can kind of take the training wheels off of him, and he can go out and start doing his thing a little bit more, so we can focus on Celebrini and Smith and get those guys ready to take the training wheels off. So, but yeah, I put me down for 20 goals, 25 assists, and I think that'd be a really, really successful season for Will Smith this year. And I think the goal scoring is going to be a huge part of his game, right? I mean, William Eklund, there was questions about the goal scoring, and we saw him really kind of find his shot this year, right, and come up with 16 goals. And as the season progressed, you saw more and more of it, including the hat trick on Hat Day. But I think Will Smith, his ability to score, I think it's going to be evident pretty quickly in the NHL. So yeah, I think he's going to be pretty close to that 20 goal mark. That's kind of where I'm putting him at, and playing a fair amount of minutes a night. And yeah, it's going to be fun. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back on Tuesday night, Wednesday, where I have a really fun conversation with Jay from Locked On Blue Jackets, where we discuss which team is going to make the playoffs first, the Blue Jackets or the Sharks. So we have a fun conversation about that. We talk about kind of how each team went through their rebuilds. Spoiler, he's very envious of the way the Sharks went through their rebuild compared to the Blue Jackets. So great conversation coming in. And then later on this week, we'll talk about the Barracuda. And if we can maybe start to trust the Barracudas. So plenty of great stuff here. When you're done checking out this episode, of course, go check out one of the other great Locked On episodes. You have Locked On HL, where you got plenty of good stuff here in the Bay Area, right? You got Locked On Niners, Locked On A's, Locked On Giants, Locked On Warriors, plenty of good stuff. So make sure you guys are go checking that out. You can follow the show wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Also, you can follow it on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at my fry hole. Until Tuesday, Wednesday. Bye, friends.